on Friday, November 7th. It's 6 minutes after the hour. You just heard a little bit of Leonard Cohen to start off our show today. That's a song called Anthem. I actually have a T-shirt that has the hook, the line, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Love that little saying there. Good morning, Vaqueros. DJ Doc V here with you for the next hour. Got some great music picked out for you. Some rather, I don't know, I wouldn't call them B-sides. Certainly Anthem with Leonard Cohen, it's not a B-side. We got some Alicia Keys, definitely not a B-side. But a few other ones that are a little bit more obscure that I had to go digging in our archives for. So hopefully we enjoy it today. Hopefully you enjoy the music. We've got, as we do every week, at the bottom of the hour, This Day in History. It is November 7th. We'll talk about that. And then I've got a poem picked out from the UTRGV Gallery Magazine, the 2022 edition. Yes, we have a library of these here. And I trying to pick out poems from student media. Many of us, and I guess I'll just speak for myself. Teenagers, teen angst. You feel a little out of place. You're trying to figure out who you are in the world. And, poetry comes along with, kind of the brooding. When I was a kid, we didn't call it emo, but I guess you can call it that now, right? Writing poems, sometimes dark, wrestling with feelings and stuff like that. So really, poems that come from the youth, there's always portions of it that have value, whether you like the entire poem or not, but just to see some of the things that come out of the hearts and minds of students that are young adults getting ready to enter into the workforce here at UTRGV. I always try and put their futures into context when I have students in my class and tell them, when you get out of here, here's what the work world's like. Here's some things that you need to, consider. You try and work out some of that teenage angst while you're still a young adult, of which is a far past for me. Right? But still, I tell you, one of the things I'm really, really grateful for is I have a pretty good memory. And, as you get older, memories are important. If you recall that line, and you folks that are fans of Watchmen, the movie, when the older superhero turns to her younger superhero daughter and says, every year as you get older, the future becomes a little darker. But the past, even the kind of yucky parts, boy, they become more and more vivid in your mind. I can certainly relate to that, that's for sure. Anyway, enough of me talking. Let's get back to the music. As I mentioned, a little Alicia Keys. I love Alicia Keys. Not just because she's from New York, and that's where I'm from, but man, she's just a fantastic musician. This is a song called Girl on Fire, and it's featuring Nicki Minaj in here. Fallen in Love. Who the heck are the Buzzcocks? Well, they're last century, of course. An English punk rock band formed by singer-songwriter and guitarist Pete Shelley and singer-songwriter Howard Devoto in Bolton in 1976. Songs include punk rock, power pop, pop punk. So I guess we could just kind of start off with some poppy stuff. But hopefully that was a bit of a curveball there. Now, you weren't expecting that one. I can't remember ever playing the Buzzcocks on office hours before. So, gotta do a little bit different stuff. Before that, we heard, let's see, what did we hear before that? It was Lady Gaga with Poker Face, Daft Punk with Get Lucky. We started off that set with Alicia Keys and Girl on Fire with a little rap from Nicki Minaj in there. It's DJ Doc V. You're listening to Office Hours on Friday, November 7th, the end of week 10 of the fall 2025 semester. It's presently 76 degrees in the beautiful upper Rio Grande Valley. Sunny skies. We're expecting a high this afternoon in the 90s with sunny skies. Humidity's high today, 41%. UV index is high. And now that we've got daylight savings is over, we fell back last weekend. It gets dark early, so sunset 5:46 p.m. today. If you're looking for weather this weekend, 94 degrees again tomorrow, sunny skies, but get ready. Sunday, a couple of cold fronts moving in here. Oh, you love to hear it. You love to hear it. 78 degrees, cloudy and windy on Sunday the 9th. And then I'll return to work on Monday the 10th. Also 70 degrees as a high. I am loving this forecast. I am loving this forecast. So really, really excited to get a little bit of cool weather here down in the valley. As we do every week on Office Hours, we've got this day in history. And on November 7th in 1944, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt is elected to an unprecedented fourth term in office. FDR remains the only president to have served more than 2 terms. Roosevelt rose above personal and political challenges to emerge as one of the nation's most revered and influential presidents. No question about it, he changed the relationship between citizens and their government during the New Deal. In 1921, at the age of 39, he contracted polio, childhood polio, and thereafter was burdened with leg braces, eventually confined to a wheelchair. From the time he was first elected to the presidency in 1932 to mid-1945, when he died in office, Roosevelt presided over 2 of the biggest crises in U.S. history, the Great Depression of the 1930s and World War II. And if you haven't seen Ken Burns' documentary, The Roosevelts, what is it? Roosevelt, An Intimate History, I think the subtitle is. I really strongly recommend it. It's just fantastic. One of the things that and look, Ken Burns is an individual. Some people criticize his work. Fine, criticize his work. But this particular story and the story that Ken Burns tells in this documentary is just excellent. It covers not just Franklin, but also his wife Eleanor, who was also his 5th cousin, and his uncle Teddy, who was the first Roosevelt to become president in 1901 after William McKinley's assassinated. So, and in fact, FDR followed his uncle's trajectory. First, running for state legislature in New York and serving there, and then becoming the assistant secretary to the Navy under Woodrow Wilson. Excuse me. And ascending to then become governor of New York and then finally the president, which is basically the same career track that his uncle Teddy did. Was once again state legislature and then assistant secretary to the Navy. Teddy Roosevelt also was like the commissioner of police in New York, or one of the police law enforcement head guy or something for a while. And, he also changed the face of the presidency. No question about it. First president to win the Nobel Peace Prize. First president to go abroad during his presidency. If you recall, the Panama Canal was being constructed during his presidency, and he went down to Panama to check on the progress of the project. So, also on this day in history, let's see some. So that's as it said, FDR died in office in 1945, so he didn't really fulfill his 4th term. And then we passed a constitutional amendment limiting the president to 2 terms. Also on this day in history. In 1885, Canada's Transcontinental Railway completed at a remote spot called Craiglashie in the mountains of British Columbia. The last spike is driven into Canada's first transcontinental railway. In 1914, the first issue of The New Republic is published. It's a magazine still in print today, although most of their stuff is online. In 1916... Jeanette Rankin becomes the first woman elected to Congress from Montana, elected to the House of Representatives. Also on this day in history, singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell is born in 1943 on November 7th. Born Roberta Joan Anderson, later known to the world as Joni Mitchell, born in Fort Macleod, Alberta, Canada. In 1966, on this day, John Lennon and Yoko Ono first meet as the Beatles walk into London's Indica Gallery, where she was preparing for opening of a exhibition of her work. On this day in 1972, Richard Nixon elected president. He also would not serve his entire term. He's the only president in our history to resign from office while still in office. And finally, on this day in 2000, former First Lady Hillary Clinton elected to the U.S. Senate in New York State. And I don't mind telling you, I was a little upset about that, being from New York. Hillary Clinton, definitely a carpetbagger, moving to New York after her husband was fixing to leave the White House and then running for Senate immediately. I never liked that. In fact, I thought New Yorkers wouldn't go for it, but I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong in the future. So that's this day in history, as we do every week on Office Hours. It is November 7th, and presently 35 minutes after the hour. Let's get back to some more music. Here's another kind of one from the archives. Had to go down in the basement to find this one. This one's from Joy Division. It's a song called Transmission, only on Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. There's an oldie for you there. It's called A Forest. Robert Smith and the gang there with The Cure. I remember having a compact disc of one of their early greatest hits compilations. Standing on a Beach, I think it was called, or something like that. Had a weird old dude on the cover, but all right, that was The Cure. Before that, it was Killing Joke. Let's All Go to the Fire Dances. Green Day with Welcome to Paradise, and we started that one off with Lost Highway by The Replacements. Minnesota band right there with The Replacements. Thanks for tuning in, Vaqueros. 10:54 and 83 degrees in the upper Rio Grande Valley. Feels like 85, but we're looking for highs in the 90s today. So don't get used to the low temperature. 94 as a high today. We're also looking at 94 degrees and sunny skies as a high tomorrow. But then again, Sunday, Monday, get ready to bust out the long sleeves. 78 degrees on Sunday with cloudy, windy conditions, and Monday, 70 degrees. Brr. I get a little. I guess I can have fun with it. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the weather here, but it's it can be a lot of fun to tease, right? You know what I'm saying? So thanks for tuning in. As we do every week on Office Hours, I've got a poem picked out for you. This one from the 2022 edition of Gallery Magazine. This is a poem called Toxic by Sofia Peña. I have no control over my emotions, but I control my actions. I failed to acknowledge your feelings while you poured your heart out to me. Despite hurting you, I can't seem to stop. But then I question, how can someone feel at ease knowing the person they love is drowning? Back and forth with my own self, too proud to admit my faults, I crave to be wanted. I crave a reaction. You say you're mad, but I know that will never last. You say you hate me, but I know you never will. I know you love me. Maybe that is the reason I didn't utter a sound. That night your voice cracked when you spewed words left and right, addressing the neglect you felt while I pretended I was in deep slumber. Maybe I do this because you have nowhere to go, no one to call home but me. That's a poem titled Toxic by Sofia Peña from the 2022 edition of Gallery Magazine, another wonderful, wonderful production of UTRGV Student Media. If you're in town this weekend, athletics has got a couple of games going on. In fact, the women's volleyball team, they have their final home game tomorrow. I will be there for the noon game. They are taking on, let's see, who are they taking on? Volleyball taking on Houston Christian, 12 p.m. here at the Field House. At 5 p.m., I know it's a big Veterans thing, Veterans Day coming up, but football hosting Nichols University. They'll be playing tomorrow on Saturday at 5 p.m. at Vaquero Stadium, Robert and Janet Vaquero Stadium here in Edinburgh. It's also going to be broadcast on ESPN Plus. And you'll be able to hear the game on, let's see, there's a few different radio stations that you can hear it on. Unfortunately, not on Vaquero Radio, but you know how it goes. These NCAA Division I football teams, it's just a little different, right? Women's tennis is up in Waco, and men's basketball is at Southern Utah. But they'll be back next weekend. So it seems. Football, men's basketball, they're still on the road next week in Idaho on the 11th. Let's see, women's and men's basketball. I see men's basketball Monday the 17th, where they're taking on Southwestern Adventist here in Edinburgh at 6:30. So get out there. Remember, with your student ID, you get into these events for free. So I invite you to go out and support our student athletes. Thanks for tuning in, Vaqueros. This is DJ Doc V. We'll be kicking it next week again on office hours at 10 a.m. Central Time here in the beautiful Upper Rio Grande Valley. Here's a little bit of the Dead Milkmen as we head out of here. This one's called Punk Rock Girl, only on Vaquero Radio.